The Jadovno concentration camp was a concentration and extermination camp in the independent state of Croatia during World War II. Commanded by Juco Rukavina, it was the first of 26 concentration camps in the NDH during the war. Established in a secluded area about 20 kilometers from the town of Gospić, it held thousands of Serbs and Jews over a period of 122 days from May to August 1941. Inmates were usually killed by being pushed into deep ravines located near the camp. Estimates of the number of deaths at Jadovno range from 10,000 to 68,000, mostly Serbs. The camp was closed on August 21, 1941, and the area where it was located was later handed over to the Kingdom of Italy and became part of Italian Zones 2 and 3. Jadvono was replaced by the greater-sized Jasenovac concentration camp and its extermination facilities. The campsite remained unexplored after the war due to the depth of the gorges where bodies were disposed and the fact that some of them had been filled with concrete by Yugoslavia's communist authorities. Additional sites containing the skeletal remains of camp victims were uncovered in the 1980s. Commemoration ceremonies honoring the victims of the camp have been organized by the Serb National Council, the Jewish community in Croatia, and local anti-fascists since 2009, and June 24 has since been designated as a day of remembrance of the Jadovno camp in Croatia. A monument commemorating those killed in the camp was constructed in 1975 and stood for 15 years before being removed in 1990. A replica of the original monument was constructed and dedicated in 2010, but disappeared within 24 hours of its inauguration. As of 2013, the construction of a new monument is planned. History Background On April 6, 1941, Axis forces invaded the Kingdom of Yugoslavia. Poorly equipped and poorly trained, the Royal Yugoslav Army was quickly defeated. After the invasion, the extreme Croat nationalist and fascist Ante Pavelića, who had been in exile in Benito Mussolini's Italy, was appointed poglavnik of an Austrian-led Croatian state the Independent State of Croatia. The NDH combined most of modern Croatia, all of modern Bosnia and Herzegovina and parts of modern Serbia into an Italian-German quasi-protectorate. NDH authorities, led by the Austrian militia, then implemented genocidal policies against the Serb, Jewish and Romani populations living in the new state. Aiming to exterminate the entire Serb population of the NDH, the Austrians sought to murder one-third of Serbs, convert one-third to Roman Catholicism, and force the rest from the country. A series of massacres were committed by the Austrians, and the degree of cruelty with which the Serb population was persecuted shocked even the Germans. The Cyrillic script was banned, Orthodox Christian church schools were closed, and Serbs were ordered to wear identifying armbands. Similar measures were enacted against Jews, who were required to wear a yellow armband with a black-on-yellow Star of David for identification. These armbands bore the word Jew in two languages, German and Croatian. Operation Located in a secluded area about 20 kilometers from the town of Gospić, the Jadovno camp was formed during the early stages of the persecution of Serbs in the NDH and was placed under the command of the Austrian Juco Rukavina. Intended as an extermination camp, it was established between 11 and 15 April 1941 and was the first of 26 concentration camps located in the NDH during the war. Most inmates at Austrian camps including Jadovno were Croatian Serbs. Other victims included Jews and anti-Austrian Croats. Notable Jadovno inmates included the mayor of Koprivnica, Ivica Hira and Croatian Jewish communist Aleksandar Savić. Immediately, the Austrians trucked several hundred detainees to a site intended almost exclusively for extermination near Gospić. Located on Mount Blebit, the town contained gorges some up to 91.5 meters deep that were used as dumping grounds. The Jadovno camp itself was surrounded by such abysses which were difficult to gain access to and characteristic of the karsted mountain range. The camp itself acted as a way station en route to these pits. Here, prisoners had to work the entire day with almost no food until exhaustion. The nearest pit to the camp was the Angstrom Aran pit, located 1 kilometer away, while the pit where inmates were executed and dumped was 5 kilometers from the camp. Here, inmates were bound together in a line and the first few victims were murdered with rifle butts or other objects. Afterwards, an entire row of inmates were pushed into the ravine. In some cases, inmates were also killed by gunfire, as well as with knives and blunt objects. Once inmates were thrown into the ravine, hand grenades were hurled inside in order to kill off the victims. Dogs would also be thrown in to feed on the wounded and the dead. The pits in the vicinity of the camp were filled with the bodies of Jewish and later Serb inmates. However, killings were not confined to these two groups, and the bodies of some Croats and Roma were disposed of in this fashion as well. By the end of June, the USTOE transferred several hundred Jewish families from Zagreb to Jadovno. Afterwards, the camp was visited by USTOE commander Vjekoslav Luberia, who opened his visit by cutting the throat of a 2-year-old Jewish child. Luberia then forced a camp guard to murder and squash the skull of a second child with his foot. The last group of inmates at Jadovno were killed with machine guns. The camp was closed on August 21, 1941, and the remaining Croat inmates were transferred to other NDH-controlled camps, while the remaining Serbs and Jews were murdered. Work on the replacement Jasenovac concentration camp started in the same month. The area in which the Jadovno camp was located was later handed over to the Italians and became part of Italian Zones 2 and 3. Aftermath and legacy. The Jadovno campsite remained unexplored after the war due to the depth of the gorges where bodies were disposed of and the fact that some of these had been filled with concrete by Yugoslavia's communist authorities. Additional sites containing the skeletal remains of camp victims were uncovered in the 1980s. The number of deaths at the camp is difficult to establish as many inmates often went unregistered as they were taken directly to the edge of ravines and murdered. Historian Paul Moses lists 38,010 Serbs, 1,998 Jews, 88 Croats and several others as being killed at Jadovno. 1,000 children also perished in camp, as did 55 Serbian Orthodox priests. Moses states that the total number of deaths at the camp was 40,123. As it operated over a period of 122 days, this would suggest that an average of 329 people were killed there every day. Sources generally offer a range of 10,000 to 68,000 deaths at the camp. Estimates of the number of Jewish deaths range from several hundred to 2,500 to 2,800. The Military Encyclopedia of Yugoslavia estimates that 72,000 inmates perished in the camp. On the other hand, the Encyclopedia of Yugoslavia states that at least 35,000 were killed in Jadovno, with a possible final death toll of 50,000 to 60,000. The highest recorded estimate of Jadovno deaths was made in 1983 by Reverend Atanasić Jevša, when he claimed that 80,000 inmates were killed. However, historian Jozo Tomasevic has referred to this claim as being exaggerated, stating that it is not based on any documentation or detailed investigation. Franjo Tuđman, the president of Croatia from 1990 until his death in 1999, denied that any deaths took place in Jadovno during the war. This claim was put forward in his 1989 book Horrors of War, Historical Reality and Philosophy. Tuđman has since been called a Holocaust denier by some, including the World Jewish Congress. Commemoration ceremonies honoring the victims of the camp have been organized by the Serb National Council, representatives of the Jewish community in Croatia, and local anti-fascists since 2009. June 24 has since been designated as a day of remembrance of the Jadovno camp in Croatia. A monument commemorating those who perished was constructed in 1975 and stood for 15 years before being removed in 1990 prior to the outbreak of ethnic violence during the Croatian War of Independence. A replica of the original monument was constructed and dedicated in 2010, but disappeared within 24 hours of its inauguration. The construction of a new monument is planned. Notes. References. Books websites External links, Association of Descendants and Supporters of Victims of Eustachian Concentration Camps in Jadovno 1941.